right, who got next? Here we are. That's Brandon Justice. I'm Dennis Fithian, and it's time to talk a little recruiting. And Brandon, it was an eventful week for you and for Michigan. And let's start out at the top. This past weekend, you went out, you hit Detroit, and then you went on to Chicago. Let's start there. Let's start where the first game was. Detroit? You went down. You saw play. You saw
Dante Moore.
So tell us about the 2023 King Detroit quarterback who's ranked 35 overall in the Rivals 250 for 20.
Yeah, and this is a guy who can finish out as the top QB in the class, regardless of if you've seen him or not. That just continues to be a dialogue nationally as a guy who could potentially finish that top spot, or at the very least, he's in the mix for it. And sometimes things can be pretty clear, like when Lawrence was coming out with Justin Fields. It seemed unanimous that Lawrence was the number one guy and Fields was taking that second spot. But with this class, it's a little bit interchangeable. And right now, it seems like Dante Moore is going to be the best quarterback to come out of Michigan in quite a long time. As for that game, real windy, so it was a really tough night to go watch a quarterback prodigy. And you could see it early on in the first quarter. He was trying to make some downfield passes, and you can tell they weren't overthrown. It was almost as if they hit a wind tunnel, right? It just kind of, as soon as you saw peak height, the ball would tumble. So he made an adjustment, which was pretty, honestly, that might have been one of the more impressive things he did the whole night, was making that adjustment to seeing, okay, my long game's not going to play. So instead of the stubbornness of, forcing your long game, he was able to kind of spot out my long game's not working, and he adjusted to a lot of the short field stuff. And King likes to run the ball in that game, especially against Allen Park. Allen Park, and it was an inferior opponent, a good team, but an inferior opponent, and they were able to run the ball to set up the pass when they needed it. But due to the conditions, really got to focus on running downhill, which they did well.
If you were at that, sorry to cut you off. If you were at that game and you were there to see a defensive tackle for Allen Park, would you have said, "Hey, who's the signal caller over on the other side for King"?
Yeah, probably would have thanked them to give me the opportunity to see them have to work against a ton of run stuffing. Just to see,
you would have known he was a big time prospect, Dante Moore. If that was the first time you saw him and you didn't know him, if it was like Dante Smith or something over there, would you say, "Hey, man, this guy looks like he's got a future as a big time prospect"?
Yeah, I mean, as far as Dante as a quarterback, he adjusted really well. And got to the red zone and dominated down there, and which was ironic considering the school we cover who was recruiting him can't seem to do a whole lot of that, though they did a very good job of it this past weekend. But regardless, yeah, Moore was really impressive in the red zone. I mean, he made, I think, 2 touchdowns. He had 2 touchdown passes in the red zone, and then he had a pass from about the 25-ish yard line to the corner, which you can find on my Twitter. It was beautiful. I mean, the kid, as far as what the kid's tools, I mean, extremely tight spiral. He can throw that thing without much draw or fade whatsoever. Really poised in the pocket, knows where he's at. The awareness is there. He's able to get around it. Like I wrote about, he's not particularly fast, but he's mobile enough to not only move around the pocket, but pick up more if he needs to. But he's the guy Michigan needs because he's going to pass before he bails out of the pocket, which seems to be a common theme with college quarterbacks, is bailing too early in an effort to be creative, or as they call it, being that kind of guy who can create things himself. But sometimes they're bailing too early out of the pocket and creating more issues with that. Dante seems to not do that. He has good pocket awareness, understands when it's time to go, when it's time to stay. Short game, elite accuracy. The long game, I didn't get a good look at. The talk has been that the long game is missing some strength in the arm, and you want to see that develop over the next year. And then over the next couple of years at Michigan. That's why Michigan could be a really awesome situation for him, being behind JJ for what would be like maybe a season, if that, depending on JJ status and if he's still the starter then, and all the variables in between. But it could be a good situation for him because it'll allow him to a year or two to kind of develop that arm, get going, and then step into an offense that's very similar to the offense that King runs, and that it wants to run the ball to set the pass up with a lot of, read options and things of that nature.
You mentioned the video that you shot. Did you get lucky there, or like you're standing there at the goal line and the ball comes shooting, it looks like it's going to hit you right in the face and it lands right into a receiver? I mean, that was a 10 out of 10 video. Was that just luck of the draw there, or did you shoot like 100 videos and that one ended up perfect?
Hey, you want to talk about poise in the pocket? I mean, shoot, that ball was coming straight for my face. I didn't flinch an inch. Never would, never have. All for the love of the game. No, I mean, there's been some fun times with things similar to that. As far as that one in particular, I just got lucky. I took about 100 videos that night. I deleted 95. So, I just would take them, delete them, because King was just running the heck out of the ball, and I couldn't blame him. So it was just a lot of take and delete, and it was a lot of desperation because normally you can see passing downs come, and you're like, okay, now I'll take my video. That wasn't they were running on passing downs. They hardly had to do any passing downs because they were running the ball so much. But yeah, I mean, I've had some funny situations similar to that. I was out of the 5-star camp in 2016, Rivals 5-star camp. And Marvin Wilson, who I believe is a senior at Florida State, or he might be in the league now, was the #1 recruit that year. And he was doing some sort of drill one-on-one with a kid, and it was to sack the cone. And when he got to the cone, he ran up to my camera and threw it down and said, "That's what I do." And that was a funny one. That one was a little more serious because I couldn't really get any closer. Otherwise I was going to interfere with gameplay when I was pretty close as it was. So, but yeah, that was just luck of the draw.
Yeah, I got to go and go to the beginning there when you mentioned that Dante Moore could unseat. I haven't seen the kid that's ranked number 2 overall that's committed to Oklahoma, but I have seen some tape on Arch Manning, who was I think it was at a Clemson football practice, and he was, I don't know, throwing it 60 yards in the air to DJ Ungalele's younger brother, landed it right in the breadbasket there. So you think there's a chance that Moore could get into that top 3 and maybe even knock off the name of Manning? I find that just because of the name, not Arch Manning, that it would be difficult for Moore.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where things are going to be interchangeable throughout the year because not only are you taking into account as a national analyst what he's doing in a game setting, but you're also going to take account what happens in a camp setting. And, there's going to be a lot of camps in between then, and there's going to be a lot of places for these analysts to see them outside of gameplay. So, 7-on-7, the camps themselves, typically a kid's going to camp twice. He'll camp at his local camp to qualify for the national camp, and then he'll go to the national camp, which is the 5-star camp. So they're going to have a chance to see him a lot. And I think that with that being said, that's going to give them the opportunity or him the opportunity, I should say, to, possibly take a leap there if he's able to really shine. And we've seen it happen before. I mean, Mac Jones was a pretty underwhelming recruit until he went to the Rivals camp, got invited to the Rivals 5-star, competed against Tua, ironically. And I'll give credit to Woody Womack, so I think he's a social media guy now at Rivals. He kind of called that pretty early that Mac Jones was going to be as good as he was. And a lot of people weren't really on that same side because Mac Jones was committed to Kentucky. And everyone thought Mac Jones was going to go to Kentucky, and that was that. I mean, I shouldn't even say everyone thought. Mac Jones was kind of an afterthought. He was just a Kentucky quarterback commit in 2016, which wasn't this grand old thing. But inevitably, the powers that be at Rivals saw him at a camp, loved what they saw, invited him to the 5-star. Kid blew up, commits to Alabama in the same class as Tua, mind you. So again, even when he committed to Alabama, which is a high honor as a recruit, he was still in that shadow of being Tua's, secondhand man, so they say, and ended up being that in college as well, coming in after him. But so far, has had a far more successful NFL career. Whether or not it has anything to do with the franchise they're both with is left to be, I guess, skeptical upon. But yeah, I mean, hey, it's pretty interesting, all of it, with the recruiting and with the camps and what can happen. And I think that Dante Moore is going to have that opportunity to be seen in front of a lot of eyes during that time.
Yeah, I think if he would have been drafted by the Jets, nobody would be talking about him right now. He'd probably be on the bench, and Joe Flacco would be coming in like he is on Sunday. Brandon Justice, you see him there on the screen if you're listening on the podcast. He was out and about this weekend, and he made a stop in Detroit. Then he went to the Windy City, and you saw Jimmy Rolder, the linebacker out of Chicago, the 4-star, who back in early October had won offer to Ball State, and since then it has been a 0 to 100 type situation with Rolder that culminated Tuesday night with a tweet saying that he's coming. Although you were laying down that groundwork since November 1st, since you hit the air here, and I guess it hit Rivals.
Yeah, it was one of those things where we talk about it. It's kind of like the video where it just kind of, that just kind of happened in the moment. And I was lucky. I did go in with some background knowledge on the situation. I had a text on the baseball side of things who knew I was coming over to Rivals. And they said that it was going to happen with Rolder to Michigan at some point. It just seemed like Rolder was, based on everything they were hearing, that Rolder was going to end up at Michigan. So he said to let me, he's like, hey, if you need something that's gonna, get you going, here's some information. I took it and said, okay, I'm gonna keep an eye on this. Someone I trust, someone who wouldn't just say that, right? So it was good information, but it wasn't enough to just take it and run with it or anything by any means. And they knew that, and I knew that. So started off slow, and then I heard back from the same side of things, and basically said, okay, well, with the Ohio State visit, things have calmed down a little bit. Yada, yada. So anyway, this inevitably all led to me kind of wanting to dive into the Jimmy Rolder situation, figure out what exactly it was, because there was some back and forth. And I got pretty close with a good source on his side of things within his camp. And that's really what's kept me fed during this time, is just getting really reliable and consistent information there. And I was lucky enough to go down to Chicago and watch him play. And man, he was just a man amongst boys out there. Shoulders are really wide. He's about 6'1", 6'2". But he looks on cleats, he looks more 6'3", 6'4", and he's just large. He's just a huge kid. He's wide as heck, man. So, it's one of those things where from a baseball perspective, you hate to not see him be able to play that sport because he had the perfect body for that. But from a football perspective, you're happy to see him in the middle of your defense because this kid exudes a leadership to another degree. He screams future captain. Academically, he has a 5.4 from an Illinois standpoint, which would be about a 4.4 in Michigan, unless you're talking non-weighted. Kid's got perfect grades, we'll put it that way. He's aspiring to go to the Ross Business School, does not mind the challenge, understands the challenge of getting into that school as well. So he really just, from the jump, this kid was a Harbaugh-esque kid who with the insane drive on the field. He linebacker, running back in the Wildcat formation, punter, blocker on special teams, all in the same game, right? So that's Harbaugh to no degree. So Harbaugh kid, academically fit in great at Michigan. It was from the start an insanely good fit. Michigan came in at the right time. The visit to Iowa was before Michigan, but when Michigan got their visit, it was a grand slam. From there, everyone had a ton of ground to make up. Unofficial to Ohio State. Didn't do it for him. Didn't need to go back. Decided if I need to get this done, I'm just going to get this done now. Did it. Here we are.
Oh, was he helping little ladies out of the stands into their cars after the game when you were there? He sounds too good to be true. Yeah, you mentioned baseball. He's a power hitting third baseman. Is it clear that he's just going to concentrate on football and there's not going to be a two-sport attempt like another linebacker at Michigan right now, Joey Vallasquez, is doing that? Is it clear if he's just football or if he's going to try both?
I think he really wants, I think his intentions are to hone in on one. But the family has been pretty consistent in saying that they think when he hears the bat ting in the spring that he's going to get that itch to go back out there. Oh, excuse me. And at Marist, the high school he goes to in Chicago, real good baseball team, a private Catholic school with a really good athletics program throughout. Their football team is in the state semifinal. The baseball team could do something similar. So with Jimmy in mind, he's a kid who is obviously you're going to take him. So if he doesn't decide at the beginning of the year that he wants to play baseball, but he goes and watches one game and it just brings him right back in, that coach isn't going to say no to him. He's going to be able to, that kid is too good. Whether you like it or not. So it's one of those things where the family thinks that his love for baseball will draw him back in. But it feels like in his mind, he's like, I want to focus on just the one thing. He wants to sign December 15th, and he will sign December 15th. So with that in mind, Harbaugh has let him know, hey, if you want to do both, go for both. But, we encourage you to do both. But it seems really like his decision to want to just do football. Again, those are his intentions because the family has this thinking that, hey, this might come true soon enough. I don't want to say definitively that he's only going to do football. I just know his intentions right now are to just do football.
December 15th, the early signing period this year, that 72-hour window that starts on the 15th. I got a couple quick hitters for you that I've been asked over the last few days. One, it comes down to the defensive line. I looked at Michigan, who with that commitment of Jimmy Rolder. They had fallen to 21 with 17 commitments. That 4-star commitment moves them up to 18. They were as high as 17, but now they're at 18 here. But a question came in: what's going on with any defensive line recruiting moving forward over this next month, or maybe the additional signing period that is February 2nd this year?
So, you had Deion Walker, defensive tackle from Cass Tech, who Michigan's been in on for a while. And this recruitment's been pretty well covered so far over the past month or so about how he publicly named Kentucky as leader. And Kentucky is the leader of the pack there, and Kentucky is the one favorite to get him right now, and that remains true. And until Michigan is able to or wants to come in and, swift his mind right now and for the foreseeable future, goodness gracious, if I could talk, I could be a podcaster, he will be a Kentucky lean. Now, that may change. Will he sign December 15th or will he, wait it out? Those things remain to be seen. I don't think he said that publicly yet. So it's one of those things that we're going to figure out. I think he will sign early, like most kids will. And I think that doesn't play in Michigan's favor particularly. But I do wonder if Michigan is behind right now for reasons other than, what's permanent, right? Like, I wonder if there is something that they can turn around with him that's going to get him to, want to come to Michigan inevitably, despite this little plateau they've encountered over here the past couple of months. So it's one of those things where they're still certainly in it, but right now they're out of it. As far as the other ones, Jeffrey Emba, they're no longer pursuing. That's been well covered and published. It just didn't seem like it was going to be something that they could work out logistically to get him in. Coming from a JUCO, Michigan hasn't recruited a JUCO in decades, if at all, and they were going to have an uphill battle with that situation. And to, put a notary on it, he did just release his top list and Michigan wasn't included. So that one's over. Would have been cool. Obviously, the kid's good. I think he's good. Number one JUCO in the country per some places. So I just wonder if, he's a guy that ends up shining out and we look back on like, oh, I wish Michigan, could have got him in. Or I wish Michigan could have pursued him further for other reasons if they're not recruiting him, right? So, and then lastly, Joshua Josephs is a guy that Michigan continues to recruit heavy, defensive edge kind of guy out of Georgia. And he's a guy that has that prototypical body type and the guy that fits right into this mold that Michigan's building with its defensive line, especially on the outside corners with the edges. And, similar to Mason Graham, who's a guy that is coming in that people are pretty excited about, but, nationally not getting as much attention. So Josephs is a guy that Harbaugh really likes a lot. And when Harbaugh really likes a guy a lot, that's typically when Harbaugh closes. And I think you can see that with Rolder. I mean, Rolder was a guy that Harbaugh was in love with, so it was one of those things where, when Harbaugh is really the guy driving the force, typically Michigan closes.
When I can't leave without asking about Deonte Jackson, the corner out of California. This is playing in Michigan's favor here because he was a USC commit. He went to the Alabama LSU game shortly thereafter. He decommits from USC. He had been to Michigan, but they're getting I don't know the hammer with him coming in to visit for the Ohio State game, which is encouraging to me. But is it more encouraging that they'll have that visit for the Ohio State game, or more discouraging that he decommitted right after he was down there in Tuscaloosa? How do you read the Deonte Jackson situation?
Yeah, I think it's more discouraging that he is coming off the Alabama visit when he decommitted. Deonte Jackson's recruitment's been well documented, and it's been confusing at times. You thought, okay, this kid's just committed to USC on paper and he's committed to Michigan. I'll tell you what, from my perspective, I'm watching things from behind the scenes back in September. I don't know I'm going to get this job. I don't know I'm going to get back in writing. I'm just on an outsider's perspective. I thought, okay, this kid's he's inevitably going to go to Michigan. My other thought was this kid seems like he's inevitably going to go to Michigan, and then Alabama's just going to get him in the end anyway, and it's all said and done. So, it's one of those things where it could be similar to the Dax Hill situation without the decommit. The problem is Dax Hill hadn't decommitted from anywhere. He had just committed to Michigan, decommitted from Michigan, then to Bama, and then decommitted from Bama to Michigan. So arguably that one's more complicated than this one. So I wonder if, it's similar to it where Michigan is, again, can close. Again, Harbaugh is a closer. He's always been this recruiting team's closer, no matter who's in this building that is as good as their job at they are in the beginnings. Frames 1 through 9, those guys can take care of it, but frame 10 has always been Harbaugh's. He's always been the guy that closes for them on big guys like this. And if it's going to happen, it's going to have to happen through him. And I think that the big connection here is the dad. He's a huge Michigan fan. He gets to take his son to the Michigan-Ohio State game. And some people on the board have said, oh, he's just going there to appease his dad. And even if that may be true, it's giving Michigan another opportunity with no one else around them, right? It gets to go on a last date. Okay, so I am a proud male who is forced to watch The Bachelor with his girlfriend, who can confirm that the final date matters when it comes to who they choose. So think of it like that, regardless of the circumstances of this. And I don't believe that is the case, but even if you are to believe that that's the case, either way, Michigan gets the final say, final big visit, final whatever you want to call it, and that matters regardless of the situation. So Harbaugh's connection with the dad, watch out for that one. That one might be what edges them out if they do. But if I had to put a hat on my head that represents the one he's going to put on, I'd probably put on a burgundy one at this point.
Well, we don't know. Maybe they'll have a bouquet of roses for him down there. We'll see how that plays out. Is that a Bachelor reference? I was trying for it. I don't know. All right. Any other nuggets? Where are you going next? What's happening this week before we talk with you again next week?
Oh, Friday. Well, unfortunately, when we got handed this one off, we kind of got the playoffs. So there's only a few kids still playing. Yeah. So I'm gonna go see Dante Moore again because I think why not? We got a head start in the 2023s. So we're gonna take that advantage, and we can get the head start in the 2023s here, and we're gonna hammer out the big fish and see how he does this weekend.
All right, enjoy it on the sideline. Stay warm. We appreciate you being on here and bringing us all the latest and who got next.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care. It's Brandon Justice, recruiting editor, TMBR. And I thought I hit the